Bandwidth for this podcast is brought to you by Ideate Software. Be sure to check out all of their great Revit applications designed to increase your productivity.
All right, we have started recording BIMThoughts. And I just arrived and hit the record button. I have no idea what's going on, and neither do you. But soon we will both learn together how great Melanie Stone is. So Melanie, define yourself.
There is no defining me.
Of course there is. There's always something to define about ourselves.
Yes, if there is a problem that needs solving and people are standing around with their thumbs in their pockets, I just jump in and figure it out. And that is the entire autobiography of my life.
Really? So when there's trouble, you'll be there.
Yeah, I tend to leave my cape at home because it makes me feel conspicuous, but otherwise, yes.
Yeah. What was that movie? If there's trouble, I'll be there. What was that? You know.
I kind of feel like busting out into show tunes right now, but...
Whenever I think of capes, I think of Edna Mode from The Incredibles.
Yes. No
you know what I'm talking about? She's like, no capes. So the ultimate problem solver. Do you have favorite problems you like to solve, or maybe common ones that you're often solving?
You know, it can be all sorts of different things. A lot of troubleshooting with why won't my file work? Or one of my favorite things when I worked in a medical facility was when the mechanical engineers were sort of chasing down a problem of like, why do we have a pipe pressurization problem or a wind tunneling problem? And you have to sort of track down every single place that there's service along the line and figure out which dampers are open and which are closed and how much air or pressure is going off at each one. It's just like, solving a little puzzle piece by piece and figuring out where something broke. It's way more fun than I make it sound.
Well, and I think that's the beauty of it, right? If you're having fun, then all is well. I'm sure the people that you're solving problems for, they're liking that you're having fun. So,
yeah, because if someone's trying to get work done and they're coming across a problem, they're going to get frustrated, they're going to get upset, and they're not going to be thinking as clearly as usual. They just want the obstacle gone. So if I can come in and take that bit of pressure off their plate, it makes me really happy.
But also looks like you are a pretty serious blogger.
I am the farthest thing from serious, but I am a blogger.
What do you like to blog about? It looks like facilities data management's up there.
Yeah, I first started my blog. Let me say that without stuttering 3 times. I first started my blog when I was working with the Gateway Autodesk Users Group. We used to put out a monthly newsletter. And it was just such a pain doing the formatting and mailing it out. So I switched to the blog format. And then as the group slowly changed over time, I dedicated more of my efforts toward blogging about facility management type issues or just general technology items, a bit on the salary survey.
And I feel like that's pretty common now, especially with us all being kind of remote, working in our own spaces. I know a lot of companies are moving to this kind of info sharing, right? Where, you're not really getting the VPN, SharePoint type of stuff. Maybe it's being shared through Teams or through a blog or something really easy that we can all get to. So definitely, I think that teaching has migrated this way. It looks like you're way ahead of us in that respect. Would you say teaching is a pretty big part of what you do?
I think it depends on the specific role that I'm filling at the time. Right now, my primary role would be overseeing building documentation, but I do get tapped for technical support, technical documentation, and if we have to give a presentation or justification to recommend CAD standards changes or procedural changes to the client, then I present and educate on an as-needed basis. But it varies from job to job and client to client based on what they need at that time.
Yeah, I mean, looking through your blog earlier, it definitely looked like you had a plethora of solutions on there, from occupancy to building management to Dynamo and, all different types of really juicy information in there. So definitely encourage people to check that out. I have some really cool little bits of information in there.
Thank you. And everybody talks about facilities management like there could be like a one solution to fill all needs. But like even if you have a really robust platform, like Archibus or FM Systems or Maximo or Tririga, like they're very mature products. They can do a ton of things. But even with all that, you still need to be aware of how to manipulate data, how to share it. Everybody has their little data silos on the design team and on the owner's side. So if you're going to be successful, especially in facilities, you really need to be open to the idea that you have to work in a lot of different systems.
With that in mind, I think this is a perfect time to play a fun game of word association as we're speaking of facilities management. So I'll start easy, and maybe it's not necessarily word association, but we'll go. So what comes to your mind when I say BIM for FM?
BIM manager.
Okay. How about the ever so controversial topic of digital twin?
Wasted effort.
What? Say that again?
Wasted effort.
Wasted effort. By the way, it was Three Amigos.
Speaking of
I
wasted
love
effort.
that one.
Yeah, Chevy Chase is in that.
So what's the I can't let wasted effort go away without maybe getting you to dive a little deeper into the digital twin wasted effort. What made you go down that road?
From what the impression that people are giving me when they talk about this is like keeping up to the same level of design documentation throughout the life cycle of a building. Whereas the first thing I do and the first thing I tell people to do is archive your project, simplify the model as much as possible, make the changes that maintenance sees or makes themselves. But keeping up an original design document level of documentation throughout the life cycle, I don't see, things should be simplified and enough to make them practical.
I feel like that's pretty common, right? When people, especially clients, ask for BIM for FM, it's like, okay, well, what do you want to use it for, right? Let's hone in on the specific need that you want to utilize BIM for, right? Whatever that might be. So I think maybe it's a matter of just understanding what the need is rather than giving everything. Let's give you the pieces and parts that are really essential to you.
Now, that is not what I said.
Please rephrase.
So I definitely believe that the facilities team should receive everything. That's the way that we have always operated buildings. From paper to CAD to BIM, does not matter. We take in whatever. Operating day to day, pre-planning for future things, but we always need to have that original project in its original form to go back to find those edge cases. That if someone happened to use a non-standard piece of equipment or a non-standard material, or there's just something that we can't get to behind the walls or above the ceiling, we have to be able to go back to that original reference. So we need a very thorough and complete design document. It's just not going to be kept up to this, the same level. We're not drawing sections and details when we replace a piece of equipment. It's just not worth the time.
So what you're saying by taking the model, clean it up. So you're taking what you have, you clean it up to what you need, make it so that it's manageable. It's what you think is there. You can add to it as you go. And then probably also importantly is to add links to the other documents that you received so that you can quickly find, let's say, the architect's specification or what have you to that piece to find out what the heck that piece is all about, right?
Yeah, it all depends on how the facility is managing their data overall, whether they are, managing the pieces of data discreetly, in which case you would link to a document, or whether they've just got a spot on the server for all the specs. You hardly ever need those, but if you do, there's that one space. Or you have all this information contained in a CAFM or IWMS, where your model is pretty much, you really only need it for the graphical portion and, pulling measurements and making updates. But the bulk of your data has been imported on your first day of business into your facility management system so that everybody has access to it there already. So they're not going to be accessing it through the model. I've literally never seen that happen in a facility.
Okay. Because I can see having multiple versions of the model for different things that you need it to do. So if you wanted a model where you had it keep track of different sensors and things like that, so you could see it graphically, or if you had a model where it was sort of like the index to where the documents live, so a graphical index, if you will.
Yeah, everybody needs something different from the model. And as long as you've got a good bin manager, data coordinator, whomever in charge of it,
Uh-huh.
making sure all the information that comes in gets put where it needs to be so that the people who need to see it can find it easily.
Right. And it's only as good as the facility manager trusts it as well.
Well,
And that trust probably changes all the time when you get a different facilities manager. They're like, oh, this model sucks. I need to start over from the beginning. And it's like, well, we've been using the same model for 5 years. It's been great.
yeah, I'm not sure. Typically, whatever happens in leadership, there
Uh-huh.
still tends to be that one subject matter expert who
Right.
is the one who's like curating the data and can tell you what their confidence level is.
Mm-hmm.
Because you have trusted contractors who make good documents. You have other contractors who somehow won the bid and you wish they didn't. In
Right.
those cases, yeah, once you get the record documents and you update your master set, you know you may have to go out and double check things.
Mm-hmm.
You may know while the construction's going on that you should go out and take photographs while the ceilings are still out so that you've got a reference later to compare to the reference documents and go, oh, that pipe isn't here, it's 6 feet that way.
Mm-hmm.
But facilities management has extremely low turnover, so that tends to be not as big of an issue as on, some design firms have a lot higher turnover. I think facilities management is roughly 2% turnover.
Mm-hmm. What switching gears a little bit, what can architects and engineers do to their models to make it better for the FM side?
Talk to the owner at the beginning of the project, and by owner, I mean that subject matter expert, not the
Uh-huh.
project managers you've been dealing with.
Right.
Talk to them up front, see what resources they have to start with. I literally was in the beginning of a $1 billion campus upgrade, and not one person on the project team came to talk to me about coordinate systems. They set up a meeting to determine what the coordinate system was for my campus.
And you already had one in place.
Exactly. Nobody bothered to ask me that.
Yeah.
Me being me, I had a guy from Autodesk invite himself to the meeting, and then he snuck me in. And
Mm-hmm.
most FMs aren't going to be that well connected. If I wasn't
Right.
as involved with the Autodesk community and my local Revit community, that conversation never would have occurred, and it would have caused a lot of problems down the line. So, number one thing to help the owners is find out who that subject matter expert is up front. Don't
Mm-hmm.
listen to the project manager. They've got extremely high turnover and don't know what they're talking about because they haven't talked to the subject matter expert either. Beyond that, coordinate well with the project team. It just drove me nuts getting deliverables at the end and the backgrounds had changed and you just never knew which one was correct. And like one guy rotated things 6 degrees and another guy rotated things a degree and a half. And I'm like, none of you guys are facing north. Like there's way too much work on the back end when you get an uncoordinated plan set like that.
And then you get the ones who insist, so well, the front door has to be at the bottom of the sheet all the time.
Yeah.
That's not how the building works on the campus. So get the facilities managers in the meetings as soon as you can. Is what I've heard.
Exactly.
So I guess that also depends when you're speaking of the $1 billion project for a campus. What happens if you're dealing with owners or developers that aren't working with hospitals or universities or institutions where we typically understand they're going to be looking after those properties for a long time. They see the value in having a good system and knowing where everything is versus the person that's building something they're just going to build and then flip it a couple years later. I don't know what to call them, but the people that aren't in it for the long haul, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Well, they're not going to be interested in it. I wouldn't think.
They're just going to say, "Hey, build me a building." As long as you get the permits and you build it, I don't think they're going to be asking the same questions as an invested owner would be.
Right. But a commercial building that was owned by a large corporation, that's a different story. If
You
you're
would think.
building a new corporate headquarters for Acme Boomerang, the world's largest boomerang company ever.
Best boomerangs.
They have the best boomerang. They use basswood, and which you wouldn't think basswood. I mean, come on. But yeah, their boomerangs are out of this world. But they just keep on coming back. And so if they're building their world headquarters, they're obviously going to want a model that makes sense.
Right.
Well, and I guess something that us, me, well, everyone here really, from the model side, the architecture side, the BIM side, we always refer to it as a model. But we've heard several times that really all the owner really needs is the data, because they're going to slice and dice it and distribute it as they need. So with that being the case, Melanie, if you were going to be given carte blanche to design a system that would allow the owners, and even more so the operation maintenance people that keep the buildings alive, some sort of process that would take that data that would come from a typical BIM, how would you do that? It's an easy question. I'm just asking you to design an entirely new category of platform that doesn't exist off the top of your head. So it should be easy.
Yeah, it was a softball question.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it is a softball question because I essentially said this earlier, that there is no one solution. There will never be one solution. It wouldn't work. It especially wouldn't work in a global firm. You have your editable documentation that comes from the design team, whether it's Revit, AutoCAD, something else. You have something that creates building documentation. The owner extracts that data out, or if you're using something like a Dorkness or something else that has the data extracted out or stored there initially, whatever, they still need that model. They still need a way to keep their plans up to date, their documentation up to date for the next renovation, for day-to-day maintenance needs, but their data is going to be majority living and stored and updated in other systems.
So that I guess that makes sense. So the design, the engineering, the construction documents, whatever they be, and hopefully, knock on wood, someday we get rid of the paper and it's just a model deliverable. You're still going to need that because you're going to need to know all the information, but you're going to have different systems and different platforms with which you make use of that information.
Yeah, and I am very excited to say that ever since I've been in the consulting world, so what's that, late 2015, early 2016, every single construction project that I've gotten closeout documents for my client has all been electronic.
Nice.
Oh, I dreamt of that day for so many years. Those paper archives, even after you get them scanned, it's just so much to wade through. It's so much easier,
In digital format, for sure.
Oh, yeah.
Well, and with that, to continue on to our word association, now that we've gotten through the BIM for FM and the digital twin, what about smart building, or take it to the next step, smart city?
I'm not as well versed with the concept of smart city, but smart building has in some way existed for decades. When I worked at that hospital, we had over 10,000 data points around the campus on our MEP systems, tracking the health of that building so that, if the heartbeat misses a beat, we get an alert and we know where it's at and we can go fix it. It may not be pretty in a 3D beautiful model. It may be a schematic riser, but those buildings already have that intelligence built in.
And that makes sense for a building like a hospital. And I guess with the advance of technology and the price of what we call smart accoutrement nowadays coming down, that more and more buildings, the average home can be smart when it comes into place. But are you finding any?
Thermostats that can talk to your refrigerator and things like that?
Exactly. So when you're at the local grocery store, your fridge can tell you to remember to bring the milk.
Yeah, or the fridge would take a photograph of the inside of itself and send it to you.
You can see
It's true.
exactly how much ranch dressing your kids have left.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, it has weights, so it knows how many eggs are left in the carton.
Right. And how much American processed cheese you have left. Cheese food.
We call that science cheese.
Science cheese. You're really a whiz at that.
Cutting edge technology now in FM systems, or what do you see as maybe tomorrow's latest, and greatest thing?
Personally, I love the reality capture, but that goes back to my MEP roots and knowing how hard it was to document existing facilities that we did not get good documentation of. Being able to tell what's up there without, destroying walls or putting patients at risk, anything that makes reality capture smoother. And every year it just gets that bit better, that much more consumer level. That you don't have to have like 2 years of specialized training and a certificate and a $200,000 piece of equipment to go out and gather existing conditions. I know that doesn't sound as sexy as some of the other.
No, absolutely. And I think that's something that we always kind of come back to on this podcast is how, even during construction, they're going in and scanning, but before walls get put up to understand where the pipes are and other things. And I would love to see the day where we have our facilities management teams walking around with goggles and understanding where the pipes are behind the gyp before, they have to do any kind of construction, or, understanding where the leak is and all of that good stuff. I mean, I think that's kind of the ideal, right?
Yeah, let's get us some X-ray vision, that ground penetrating radar we were talking about. Let's get that we can do safely through walls. We had some major disasters in my time in facilities. My personal favorite was they were renovating 2 or 3 floors of ORs across 4 interconnected buildings. And this one contractor had been warned, don't go drilling without checking with facilities on the existing conditions. Sure enough, they drilled through the slab, but there were pipes embedded in the slab. Not common, but it was all throughout that building. So they punctured a pipe in the ORs that were newly renovated, and they completely flooded the floor below, which was sterile supply. So that hospital lost millions of dollars in income. People had to be transferred to other facilities because they couldn't safely perform any operations in there until all of that water had gotten cleaned out. If you could walk through there and you could have some X-ray specs and look through the floor, you'd go, I shouldn't drill there. That would be fantastic.
So they didn't call before they dug.
They did not.
So what is the new way cool thing these days in FM?
We don't do new and cool. We wait until things are 20 years old. We can write an ROI, perform exhaustive analysis, and fight tooth and nail the other departments that actually make money so we can get the funding for it.
Oh, come on. There's got to be something new and cool that everyone is like, I got to have this.
Melanie? Wait, I'm not new.
You're definitely cool, though.
Thank you. No, I think everybody is just really trying to, tighten up their documentation, make the best use of their facility management systems, enjoy the paperless offices. I don't see any real big drivers. There's building efficiency, like better conference room scheduling. Can you tap and schedule on the go?
It's interesting that you said better conference room scheduling, because then that opens up a whole new world that, hey, it's facilities management is more than just the building. It's scheduling the conference rooms. It's what other things are am I missing being so short-sighted and just thinking architecture in the building?
Well, basically anything that could use that data. If you have leadership who wants to be efficient, they're going to make sure everybody hooks into that. That could be key control. Which key cores go to these rooms? Which key cores go to this furniture? Security. You have people scheduled for meetings. That automatically goes down to security at the front desk. Here are these people from these companies. Here's the person they're here to meet. Here's the conference room they're going to be in. If you have a secure building. Asset management. Chain of custody, especially for, government agencies. They have to account for everything that comes in. If this piece of artwork is transferred from this building to another building, they have to be able to track everybody who touches it. If it's lost, how do you attach a security or police report to it? How do you get reimbursement to replace it? When you do asset verification, you can link in, hey, everybody in this department has to verify their assets once per year. That goes up to their director who approves or disapproves it. Let's see, on top of that, obviously, basically anything with asset management. You can barcode, you can scan with your cell phone a barcode, and it can pull up the correct record in your facility management system if you have it set up correctly. Trying to think, janitorial can be something that's tracked there as well. How much waste you're moving out, how much recycling. Sometimes you're paying more for it, sometimes you're getting refunds. Also, energy management. Which buildings are performing the best? What's their commonalities and their ages? Are there any low-hanging fruit? Can we upgrade the lighting systems, and how much money would that save us? And I'm certain there's other things I'm forgetting, but yeah, we can track anything as long as you have the leadership that helps make it happen.
I really didn't think that far into it, to be honest with you.
I didn't either until I actually had to start implementing it. Hoteling and hot desking is another one.
Yeah, the IT department just doesn't do that. The facilities people need to be involved too, to make sure there's a desk, make sure there's electricity turned on.
In mind with the idea of hot desking in the current climate that we're living with, many people working from home, and the chance that it may not ever go back to completely being normal. I guess all that may become much more critical when you're planning things out. Do we need as much space as we need before because we don't have as many people, or do we need more space because we need that 6-foot bubble around everyone when they're back in the office? Which side of that coin do we end up on?
I think that's going to depend a lot on corporate culture, because we've proven right now that we can work from home, a big chunk of us. So I'm working with a very large client right now that's sort of been doing densification projects for the past few years, going from 6-foot desks to 5-foot desks to 4-foot desks, but having big recreation areas, huddle rooms, interactive collaboration spaces, game rooms, snack bars, that sort of thing. But now they're looking at how do we de-densify immediately? How do we replace these collaboration spaces with more desks? How do we swap out these older conference rooms meant for face-to-face, divided up into maybe 2 smaller conference rooms with video walls so people can meet virtually in a more comfortable environment? So I'm really interested to see. I've never been that interested in occupancy planning. I've always been far more interested in MEP and data management, but it is interesting to see how corporations on a large scale are trying to re-envision on the fly how their team should work and could work, and they can still have that cool vibe that people want to go into the office.
Right.
I heard occupancy there, Dana. I'm sure you must have a question around that.
Well, it actually was about building occupancy. Yeah, I do quite a bit around occupancy. Actually, I was teaching some today at work on some of the Dynamo workflows. Do you want to talk through some of the stuff that you do with occupancy, Melanie?
Well, I'd much rather hear what you were teaching at work today.
Well, it's a Dynamo workflow that basically allows you to load in some functions of space keys from different code sources and versions, and then allows you to associate them to your different areas within Revit. And utilizes Dynamo, all that good stuff. But I did see on your blog, I'm trying to find it here, of course, now that we're talking about it, I can't. Here we go. Company looking in to fill a lot of occupancy planning and related roles. So yeah, it was specifically about your company looking today and planning roles. But you want to talk through some of those, maybe some of the ways that you guys go through occupancy planning?
That's not something I work on directly myself. I work for a global real estate brokerage, And I have only the vaguest idea of what they do. I believe they provide space, occupancy, and facility management for, things like office buildings. And they've acquired, people like me, consultants, CAD, BIM, CAFM technicians to help them serve their clients better. So what they would do is they would help one of their clients sit down and say, hey, here's your size right now, here's your projected growth, here's the markets you would want to move into. You're mainly in the Midwest and you want to move to Canada and the West Coast. Here's how we can find you some space. Here's how we can design and fit it out and then manage it afterwards. So it's a pretty overarching topic because I think they touch on a lot of different things.
And it's super interesting to hear it from that side of the fence, which obviously as planners on the, architectural side and, fire protection side of things, it's sometimes hard for us to see it from that glimpse and that perception.
Well, I do believe my company is still looking for occupancy planners. So if anybody wants to go to my blog and find that blog post, they can check things out and reach out to me if they're interested. But I know that's something that is difficult to find. Nobody goes to school and says, I want to be an occupancy planner. They go to school, they become an architect or something else, and then they fall into it later because they see the need.
Really? Nobody has a PhD in occupancy planning?
I don't know that for sure. I haven't met all the occupancy planners, but just going based on what I know.
Yeah. Well, this has been enlightening because I didn't think about all of the other parts of facility management. I've always thought of it as mainly HVAC systems is what I've always thought in facilities management or electric and things like that. I never thought of it in the hot desking, in the probably signage.
Oh, yeah, I didn't even think about signage, but
Yeah.
That's another one because they have to not only manage, you have to put the room name, make sure it's easy to find, room number, and at certain points throughout the building, the signs also have to have braille on them if they're a means of egress.
Right.
And that's a lot of data to track. I never would have thought about it either.
That's one of the things that we changed in our documentation is that instead, because we had people asking for a braille font so that they could put the real braille on the image or on the documents, and it's like, well, that really shouldn't exist there. It should just be a note that says braille, because how do we know it's right or wrong as the architect? What?
Because I would just put something obscene there and just assume someone would catch it later on. You're telling me they wouldn't?
So, something that would make a blind person mad, or giggle for that matter.
Maybe they blush.
They could blush.
I wouldn't want the responsibility either. That needs to rest with like this person printing the signs.
Right. Yeah. Let them be in charge of that because they're the experts in theory. Yeah. So all of these extra little things that facilities managers do, and here I thought it was just they kept inventory of MEP and electrical and put the little stickers on the outlets and things like that.
Going back to my blog again, and I've also done a presentation, people always ask me, what does a facility manager want with BIM? And I answer them first with an answer and then with a second question. First answer is the same thing they wanted from paper files and CAD files, which is a design document set they can operate the building from. But what you're actually asking me is, who is the owner? So I wrote this entire blog post breaking down different subsets of the owners and what is a priority for them that they might eventually get out of that model. If anybody wants to take a deeper dive into that.
And it's not the owner of the building per se, it's the owner of the information, right?
Right. So it could be like the facility manager, the CAD manager, the project manager, security, IT, all those different players.
Right. Absolutely. And they all come back to facilities to get the information they need in order to do what they need to do.
Correct. They are the gatekeepers.
Right. So the facilities managers are really librarians.
That was the the thing I always like to call myself, but my director at the hospital used to describe it as we were the medical records of the building. And the
Mm-hmm.
HVAC was the
Oh,
lungs and plumbing was the veins. And
right.
yeah, so that
Uh-huh.
made me feel good. Oh, I'm the building's
Mm-hmm.
medical records. Call me doctor.
Right. And the big trash dumpster at the bottom was probably a different part of the body.
If I ever heard a transition to the end of the podcast, that's got to be it.
That's got to
Yep.
be it.
Take out the trash.
We're going to take out the trash. Thank you very much, Melanie. I learned a lot today. I didn't think I would learn as much as I did learn today. This has been a great episode. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And if anybody has any facilities management questions, they're welcome to reach out. I'm on every social media network as Melanie Stone or Mistress of the Dorkness, and I'm always happy to chat FM.
Great. Thank you very much.